That's a big problem for somebody who's wanting to try to retire and live off what they've saved, their life savings. They talk about how people have 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 options. I've considered a lot of these options, but to me, it really just boils down to one option. For people who want to retire before 65, I mean, this is, in my mind, the biggest issue. If you want to retire before you turn 65 years old, you need to In my last video, I talked about how I'm about to turn 60 years old and I'm trying to decide when to retire. And I talked about how I've watched a bunch of videos about when to retire. And at the end of my video, I said that I've decided, at least for now, that I'm going to wait at least 1 or 2 more years to retire. And so in this video, I'm going to explain the reasons for that, why I think I need to wait 1 or 2 more years. And basically, it really boils down to one kind of big reason. Health insurance. That's really the major reason I think I need to wait at least a couple more years. So, as everybody knows, we don't become eligible for Medicare here in the US until we are 65 years old. And prior to that, most of us get health insurance through our employers. And so if you want to retire before you turn 65 years old, you need to figure out something to, as they say, bridge the gap between employer-based health insurance and Medicare. And so I've done some research. Well, I've actually done a lot of research and looked into it a lot. And I've also watched a lot of YouTube videos and see what people have to say about it. And a lot of videos out there, they talk about your 4 or 5 options, or maybe I think I saw one that said 7 options for health insurance before you get Medicare at age 65. And I've considered a lot of these options, but to me, it really just boils down to one option that, frankly, there's only one option that I would feel comfortable with. And I'll just give you that right up front, and I'll go through the other options afterwards. But to me, the only option I would be comfortable with is the Affordable Care Act, which is also known as Obamacare. And then some people say another option is private health insurance, but to me, it's kind of the same thing as the Affordable Care Act, because in the Affordable Care Act, you go through the government website, the marketplace they call it. I think it's healthcare.gov or something like that. And you go through that site, but ultimately you get the health insurance from one of the big kind of traditional health insurance companies like an Anthem or a Blue Shield, something like that. The difference is if you go through the marketplace, you have the chance of the possibility of getting subsidies. And that all depends on your income. So that's the advantage to using the Affordable Care Act, is to get the possibility of subsidies. But if you get so-called private insurance, I mean, that's really, you're just cutting out the marketplace and going directly to one of those insurance companies, but you're going to pay the full price. There's no possibility of subsidies. And by the way, this is all my understanding of this stuff, and I could be wrong, so none of this is any type of advice or recommendation. I could very well be wrong. But anyway, you're just going directly to a private insurance company. You don't get subsidies, you pay the whole thing. If you go through the Affordable Care Act, you end up with, I believe, the same insurance, but you have the possibility of subsidies. So those are the only 2 I would be comfortable with. And the reason that's a problem, the reason that's causing me to wait to retire, or one of the major reasons, is because health insurance is expensive. And certainly if you don't get subsidies and you want to go to one of those big companies, or if you don't qualify for the subsidies, I mean, I've priced it out, and it all depends on the plan, and the deductibles and the co-pays and all of that, the co-insurance part and all of that. It all depends. But I mean, some of these plans the full price can be, it's almost always over $500 a month, and really more like $600, $700, $800, $900. I mean, I've seen them as high as like $1,200 and $1,300 a month for these health insurance plans if you're going to pay the full price. Now, and so that's a big problem for somebody who's wanting to try to retire and live off what they've saved, their life savings. I mean, that's a major expense. Now, yes, if you go through the Affordable Care Act, maybe you can get subsidies. And so, yes, that helps a lot. But in order to get the most subsidy, I mean, you have to have a low income. It's kind of tricky. It can't be so low that you fall into the Medicare range or Medicaid. When you get very low income, then I think you don't even qualify for Obamacare subsidies. I think then you're into Medicaid. But even so, if you have some income, then you may qualify for the Affordable Care Act subsidies if the income is low enough. But the problem is, I've looked into it, and even if you have, I don't know, $50,000, $60,000 a year in income, the subsidies really start to go down. At least when I looked at it, and maybe I was doing something wrong. But basically what I'm saying is, if you have some income from part-time gigs or maybe some investment income that's outside of a retirement plan or something like that, then that's going to reduce the subsidies you get. And it can be a major expense. I mean, I looked at it, and basically what I was kind of looking at was like the plan. Maybe the full price of the plan was maybe $700, $800 a month, and maybe I could get something like a $200 to $300 subsidy. And so, yeah, that leaves you still paying like $400 or $500 a month out of your pocket for the health insurance. And it's not only that. That's the thing I want to emphasize, and I don't know that if a lot of people have thought about this, but when you look at the plans that are available for that price, they tend to be fairly high deductible plans. I mean, the stuff I was looking at were like $6,000, $7,000. I think I saw one with like a $9,000 deductible, yearly deductible. And that's along with your maybe paying these premiums of your share of the premium, maybe $400 or $500. I mean, that's a lot of money. That's a lot of money. And then if you, God forbid, you do have a health issue, and you have to pay that deductible, I mean, that's really going to add up. And so that's kind of my point with it, is when you look at the Affordable Care Act, it's not necessarily only the monthly premiums, but you have to look at the actual plan. And the deductibles and co-pays and so forth tend to be higher. At least I know they're higher than the employer-based plan I have right now. Right now I'm still working full-time, and my employer-based plan is really a good deal. I mean, it really is. It's a $2,000 deductible. And then on top of that, we even get help from the employer to take care of that. So it's just such a good deal. But when you go to these Affordable Care Act plans, I mean, the deductibles can just be a lot higher than what I think a lot of people are used to. So that's my point with it, and that's what I say. I mean, I could maybe think about retiring soon if it weren't for all that extra expense that I'm going to have to pay for health insurance, and that's the problem. So getting health insurance is a really big challenge for people thinking about retiring before the age of 65. As I said, some of the other videos I've watched, they talk about how people have 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 options for health insurance, but I'll quickly go through them now in case you're wondering why I've ruled them out for myself. The first one a lot of people talk about is, you just get on your spouse's plan. Your spouse is probably still working, and you can get on your spouse's employer-sponsored health insurance plan. Well, that doesn't help those of us that don't have a spouse, so that rules that out. Second one is, they always say, there's COBRA. You can just continue your employer's plan, quit work and continue your employer's plan. Well, first of all, that generally only lasts 18 months. In my situation, it would only be 18 months. And then it's expensive because your employer doesn't continue paying it. You have to pay the full price of the plan. For me, I think it would be $800-900 a month, something like that. So, and again, it's only 18 months. So at my age, it wouldn't be long enough. So I rule that out. Another option people talk about are so-called health sharing ministries or health sharing plans, which I must admit, I have not done all the research on those plans and I don't fully understand those plans. I have a lot of questions, let's put it that way, as far as what laws govern those plans, what is their obligation to pay. And so at this point, I'm just not comfortable with something like that. So that I rule that out for myself. Another option, I believe, are maybe like short-term catastrophic type plans are available. I believe I remember maybe 5 or 6 years ago, those came on the scene. I don't know if they're still around. And again, I just don't know much about them and haven't heard much about them. And that alone kind of concerns me about a plan like that. So those are typically, according to my understanding, some of the other options available for health insurance in this situation. But from what I gather, from everything I've looked at, in the end, it kind of boils down to the Affordable Care Act. And so that's why I wanted to make this video, just to say, for people who want to retire before 65, I mean, this is, in my mind, the biggest issue. Anyway, thanks a lot for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please press the like button and consider subscribing to my channel. Thanks again. I'll see you in the next video.